Welcome to Sense of Style. I'm Stuart. 8 fragrances that signal sexual intent. The number one thing men do wrong in a dating scenario is they don't signal sexual intent. They have to remind the woman why you're there. You're a woman. I'm a man. That's why we're here. You have to flirt at least a little bit. Most men don't do that because they're afraid of rejection. The problem is if you don't do that, the woman goes home and tells her girlfriends, well, he was nice. He had a good job, but there was no spark. You did not provide the spark. The great thing about really good fragrances is they signal sexual intent for you. Now, it's not everything, but it takes a lot of the pressure off. If you have a seductive fragrance, it sends her a message. The first fragrance is such an obvious choice that I'm not going to go into it too much. It is Musc Ravageur by Frederic Malle. The formula for this fragrance was turned down by Japanese designer house Shiseido in the late 90s because it was too bold, too daring, and too sexually suggestive. So Maurice Roussel, the perfumer, took this to Frederic Malle, and then the rest is history. Now, I hear a lot of people talking about fragrances being sex in a bottle. Compared to this, there's nothing that I've smelled that's even close to being sex in a bottle. This one is the most sexually suggestive fragrance I've ever tried by far. It's a lot of sweet notes, vanilla, tonka, amber, and cinnamon. Compared with musky and animalic notes, there's a push-pull element to the fragrance. It's phenomenal performance. You wear this in a date, sexual intent is implied. Fragrance number 2 is YSL Nuit de L'Homme. I had a full bottle of this. I sold it, but I did keep this for reference. The reason I sold it was pure and simple. I have Blue Electrique. I felt the two were redundant. They're very, very similar. Most people prefer Blue Electrique because of the performance, but for what this is made to do, the original formula, even the watered-down version, is still really good. If you look at this ad, when this came out, it was made very, very clear what this fragrance was trying to do. And when you're on a date with a woman, you're going to be close. You do 5 or 6 sprays of this in the head and neck area. She will smell it, and it is definitely a seductive scent. One of the things I like about this fragrance is, much like Musc Ravageur, which has contrasting note styles, this does as well. And it's a reflection of the 2 perfumers that did most of the work on this fragrance, Dominique Ropion and Anne Filippo. Dominique Ropion has a very bold style. He came out with Carnal Flower. He's very in your face, very bold. He was the one that decided to have cardamom as not just the main note, but the only top note here. It was completely revolutionary. Prior to this, cardamom was a note used in the background. He put it first and foremost. That was a bold move. But Anne Filippo, she's renowned to be really good at smooth white florals. She was responsible for the aromatic quality of this, the lavender and the cedar. So you've got the combination of the bold and the smooth. If you are only looking to use it as a seductive fragrance, it still works. Fragrance number 3 is Prada Luna Rossa Black, and it's surprising that Prada would be on this list because they're known as fresh, clean, and professional. However, when I tried this, it was very obvious that this was a seductive fragrance. However, the professionalism and the cleanliness of Prada is reflected in the notes. If you look at the base here, they've got what looks like a tonka bean, but next to it, they don't call it tonka, they call it coumarin. And coumarin is part of a tonka bean, but it's not the full bean. The full bean is richer and sweeter. Coumarin pulls back a little bit, much like the way Prada do their fragrances. So you've got the coumarin in this. You've also got amber. So there's a sweetness, but it's not a heavy sweetness. And then you've also got musk and angelica, which is an aromatic musky note. So you've got the musk and the sweetness. You've got the performance the Prada normally gives, which is 2 to 3 feet of projection, which is what you want on a date. You don't want to overwhelm the woman, but you want her to smell it. That will happen with this fragrance. Now, I think this is one of the top 5 designer fragrances I've ever tried. However, it does have a drawback. I've read enough articles that talk about certain people, probably 5% of people, get a rubbery feel. It comes from the mixture of coumarin and patchouli. I would say it is probably only about 5% of people get that rubbery feel. I certainly don't. I think it's fantastic, but just be aware of that when you're making a purchase. Fragrance number 4 is Versace's Oud Noir. Now, what is an oud fragrance doing on a seductive fragrance video? Tom Ford knows oud better than anyone else. He was a creative director at YSL when he brought the original M7 to the Western world. He then started his own brand and he created Oud Wood. And it was designed to mix Western sensibilities with the Middle Eastern oud. So make a Western version of an oud fragrance. And then Versace took that formula and made it even more accessible by adding a lot of freshness. So this is similar to Oud Wood, but it's not quite as sweet. And it is definitely more palatable, I think. And it's often referred to as a great starter oud. But that's not the key to this fragrance. To me, it's the fact that, yes, the oud is accessible. You've got some citrus notes. You've got a lot of saffron and black pepper that freshen it up a bit, but you've also got cardamom here. And my experience with this fragrance is, as the oud dissipates after about an hour, you start to pick up the cardamom. It turns into a really nice, seductive date night scent. Perfect performance for a date as well. Fragrance number 5 is Serge Lutens Chergui, and most people look at the name and they look up the house and they see it's from France. There is a very strong connection, however, to Morocco and North Africa, because Serge Lutens in 1968 bought a house in Marrakesh, Morocco, and he's lived there since the 1970s. A lot of his fragrances have links to Morocco and to North Africa. This one is no exception. A Chergui, which this is named after, is a hot wind that goes across the Sahara that's picked up in Morocco, and it's meant to be, the fragrance itself is meant to be a sweet fragrance that you can wear in hot weather. I have found that to not be true at all. Do not wear this very sweet fragrance in the summer. Any other season is fine. I think actually it's a really good date fragrance for the evening, but yeah, I don't believe that Chergui nonsense. When it comes to the sweetness of this, a lot of people talk about the hay note because it gives an earthy sweetness. However, there's also amber and honey is the sweetest of all sweet notes, and this is a very sweet fragrance. It's also a very strong fragrance, and it is a really good sweet tobacco. The funny thing about this one is it's not just a really good fragrance, it's also an innovator. It came out in 2001. It is one of the very first successful sweet tobacco fragrances ever. Fragrances like Herod, Naxos, even designer fragrances like Dolce & Gabbana, The One, they owe their existence and their popularity to this innovative fragrance. However, as I said, it's really, really strong, so you might want to underspray in a dating scenario because you don't want to blow the person away. But ultimately, though, this is a great date night fragrance. Fragrance number 6 is Calvin Klein's Obsession for Men. This came out in 1986, and it's really hard to describe. What a massive departure this was from what was going on in men's fragrances at the time. Fougères, barbershop fragrances, green fragrances, that was the thing at the time. This is a very sweet vanilla, amber, and cinnamon fragrance, and it completely upended men's fragrances. And the only reason it did that was because the female version of this was so unbelievably successful that it saved Calvin Klein's fragrance division from being canceled. Calvin Klein was going to scrap their entire fragrance division. However, the female fragrance line was so successful that not only did they not scrap it, they decided to come out with a men's version that was quite similar in some ways. It is more masculine, but it went more for an Oriental ambre style. It was a hit as well, not as big as the female version. However, the advertising for this was so overtly sexual that the ads were banned in a number of U.S. states. They weren't hiding what they were trying to do here. This is meant to be a sexy date night fragrance, and oddly enough, it really does fit into the modern aesthetic. It was actually considered to be unisex back in '86. It's not now. It's still a men's fragrance, but it is definitely along the lines of what we're getting in fragrances today. This is an older bottle with really good performance. Even the newer bottles, though, the performance is okay, and they're very inexpensive. If you overspray, you'll be fine, and they are still worth a purchase if you're looking for date night fragrances. Fragrance number 7 is Armani Code Absolu, and I really think that the Armani Code line, especially the 3 fragrances that really took off, is probably the number one designer date night line that there is, and that's specifically what they were going after. It's a combination of something leather, which is masculine, and something sweet, which is seductive. This particular fragrance has a lot of sweetness. It has both vanilla and tonka. and then it's got suede, so it's a little bit smoother. It's got some nutmeg and carrot seeds in as well to give it a little bit of spiciness. This is the most popular fragrance in the Code line. However, it has been discontinued, and that's kind of why I pushed it to the back of the video. However, it's got really good performance. If you can manage to get a bottle of this, or even just to try it, it really is a fantastic date night experience fragrance. Finally, we have Zadig and Voltaire. This is him, and this is slightly different than the other fragrances for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is really reasonably priced. And number two, though, it could be interesting to some men. This has a balsamic character from the incense note here that makes it a little bit more masculine than some of the other fragrances, at least overtly masculine. So you're basically getting, the sweetness of the vanilla and the spiciness of the black pepper, which is the traditional thing, but that incense note really pulls it in a masculine direction. The performance is really good here. So this is more of a inexpensive, a reasonably priced date night fragrance with a balsamic masculine kick. And so, yeah, I really do think that men, and I know when I dated, I didn't do a good job of showing sexual intent, of flirting. I tried to be a gentleman, and it really doesn't work. So I do recommend a seductive fragrance on a date. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.